has its own rules.
Needs more time to prepare this case.
We have our marching orders. Is that clear?
Yes, sir.
And secrets are hidden by lies.
We can't even have the appearance of a cover-up.
It will take an outsider to discover the truth.
I'm not going to leave this job until I find out what happened.
Is it a threat?
Oh, yes, sir.
Tommy Lee Jones, Samuel L. Jackson.
Withholding evidence is no less evil than charging my client with murder.
Rules of Engagement, rated R. Starts Friday, April 7th.
So in this movie, you have Samuel L. Jackson playing this U.S. Marine colonel who was brought to court-martial after Marines, under his order, kill several civilians outside the U.S. Embassy in Yemen. And Tommy Lee Jones is the lawyer that has to defend him in court. And it's definitely a movie that's taking a lot from A Few Good Men. It's also taking a lot from, I guess, To Kill a Mockingbird a little bit. But that doesn't mean the movie is good. Yeah, this was a complete waste of time. It's a film that I think was trying to be kind of a new generation, like I said, a new Few Good Men, or To Kill a Mockingbird for a new generation, and really comes out as very formulaic and very lackluster overall. There's not a whole lot of surprises in the movie. There's not a lot of things in this particular film that are really enjoyable. The acting overall really isn't that great as a whole. Like, it really wasn't. It really didn't live up to the hype that this movie had going into it. This was William Friedkin's first movie after the infamous bomb of Jade. And I guess for him, it's kind of a little bit of a return to form for him. But at the same time, doesn't mean the movie was great either. I mean, this movie, I would rather watch this over Jade again. But now that I think about it, Jade is one of those movies that's so bad it's good. This is just so mediocre that it's just mediocre. I mean, it's not a film it's not even a bad movie per se. It's just a boring movie. Not a whole lot really happens here. It goes on for way too long. You really do not get interested in this movie whatsoever when it's all said and done. And you can, like I said, you can predict what's going to happen when it's all said and done. I mean, they don't even hide it in this trailer, honestly. Like, it's Bruce Greenwood. Usually he plays a bad guy in movies like this. And, yeah, I may have just spoiled the movie for you, but you know what? I did you a favor. So, yeah, bottom line, avoid this one like the plague. Despite the fact that it has some good talent on the cast, a good writer in Stephen Gaghan, who would later go on to write Syriana and Traffic. He's written better movies. A lot of these people have been in better movies than this. Avoid this one like the plague. So, Rules of Engagement. So, on to our next movie, and that is David Duchovny and Minnie Driver in Bonnie Hunt's Return to Me.
You're just gonna tell him. Oh, how do I tell? You just, Bob, you know, I had a heart-warming dream about you.
Oh, who died?
Bob, why?
He's married?
Joe, maybe you should put on a shirt, or Grace will never be satisfied by another man.
So the story here is that you have a man played by David Duchovny who falls in love with a woman, Minnie Driver, who receives his wife's heart and must decide which woman it is who holds his heart. And hilarity ensues, and you could get to pretty much predict what's going to happen with the typical romantic comedy elements to it. This is a film that Bonnie Hunt not only stars in, but she also directs. This was the only movie she ever directed, although she did direct a short film within the anthology film Call Me Crazy, which came out about 13 years after this on Lifetime. But you see Jim Belushi's also in here as well. There's also Carol O'Connor in his last film before his death. Robert Loesch is in here. Bonnie Hunt. Like I just mentioned, Bonnie Hunt. David Alan Grier. Jolie Richardson. There's a really good cast involved in here. And it's not a bad movie per se. It's just a film that, when I think of a romantic comedy, I don't think of Mulder as the lead, as a romantic comedy lead. Like, David Duchovny is really good at the deadpan acting. Like, he doesn't really have to go range a lot in terms of his acting to really be great. Even though he does it very well on the X-Files when he has to do it, but here, asking him to be the romantic lead to Minnie Driver, I think, was a little bit too much. I feel like he could have gotten somebody else for that. But he's not bad in it. I mean, I just expect a little bit better. And I don't think this movie is bad overall. It's almost bordering on kind of an underrated gem, but it's really not a great film overall. But it's not a bad film either. But this is one I definitely would watch again. I wouldn't watch Rules of Engagement again, but this is one that if I really wanted to, I could watch it again. I could find a lot to enjoy about it, mostly because I like Bonnie Hunt. I've seen a lot of the shows that she's been involved in. She's a great comedic actress overall. Like, she's a really pretty damn good comedic actress. I mean, Life with Bonnie was a really good show that lasted only a couple seasons on ABC. But yeah, this is a film that I don't really I wouldn't say it's an underrated gem, but it's a film that I think this definitely deserves a lot more attention than it probably gets. It's a film that not a lot of people ever talk about, but it's probably good for a one-time watch. Maybe a couple more down the road, but I wouldn't watch it right away. But it's a film that I would say that it's something that I think should be worth seeing. Maybe not. Don't go in there expecting a great romantic comedy classic, but expect a decent film out of it. It's actually, I think, a lot better than people would led you to believe it to be. But yeah, that's Return to Me. So, speaking of comedies that came out this weekend, here's one that doesn't work as a comedy. That is Ready to Rumble.
Buenos nachos.
I didn't know you spoke Spanish.
Yeah, I took it in high school. A bunch of times. She's the nitro's nitro girl. My dream girl, bro. I got your poster up in my room.
Which one?
It's this one.
Ready to rumble. Rated PG-13. Starts this Friday.
Okay, that should be the warning side that this is not going to be a good movie. Sex in a PG-13 comedy does not usually pan out very well, but this is a Ready to Rumble. Sadly, the follow-up for Brian Robbins after he directed Varsity Blues, which was a far superior film, and this one, not so much. The writer of this is Stephen Brill, who's written stuff like the Mighty Ducks movies. He's also directed some notable Adam Sandler movies like Little Nicky, Mr. Deeds, Without a Paddle. And the story here, basically, you have these two guys, these two guys played by David Arquette and Scott Conn, which I don't know if that's really the pair that you want to have in a movie like this, but they're basically two dim-witted sewage workers who watch their hero, WCW wrestler Jimmy King, played by Oliver Platt, get screwed out of the world title by this wrestler, Diamond Dallas Page, who's played by the wrestler Dallas Page, and there's a lot of WCW and WWE wrestlers in here, and evil WCW owner Titus Sinclair, who's played by Joe Pantoliano. They embark on a quest to help their hero win this title and honor back, and it features the cameos by a lot of wrestlers from the WWE and the WCW, including Bill Goldberg, Sting, The Undertaker's in here. You see in the trailer, John Cena has a cameo in here. It's one of his early film roles before he eventually signed with the WWE. And you see Rose McGowan as the love interest in here. And this is basically a film that tries to make a Dumb and Dumber type of film with wrestling and tries to sell the WC World Championship Wrestling as something that is actually worth it, but really is not. This thing actually... but then again, like, this was just before they sold this over to the WWF, and this was back before the WWF eventually became the WWE, because of all things, World Wildlife Federation actually had the rights to the WWF thing, and then eventually that eventually caused the WWF to change their name to WWE. But I digress. This film really is not very good. This is actually a really unfunny comedy. This is just a movie that they try so hard to sell the WCW on you, and so much so that once this movie came out, they really thought that this movie was actually going to be memorable, because they actually generated publicity for the company by running a storyline in which David Arquette became a WCW World Heavyweight Champion, and the fans that they had really did not like that. And Arquette himself believed it was a bad idea right from the get-go, and thought it would damage the WCW World Heavyweight Championship he held in such high regard. And, like I said, kind of did, because they did not last very long after this movie came out. And, yeah, this is one of the worst comedies I've ever seen. This is just not a funny movie. It's like I said, they're trying to do a Dumb and Dumber movie, but bring in wrestling. But Dumb and Dumber had the writing of the Farrelly brothers involved. But Stephen Brill, as good of a writer as he is as good of a writer that he's done some classic comedies from the 90s, and as good as our director Brian Robbins is, they are not the Farrelly brothers at their peak. And this film really was a mess on so many levels. Like I said, PG-13. Like, you're not going to get anything good out of that just from that alone. But yeah, this thing bombed hard, and it's hard not to see why, because the movie is not funny. It's not funny. It's not clever. It's a waste of time. It's stupid. It's not enjoyable. There was potential for something good here, but not so much. So yeah, that's Ready to Rumble. So on to our last movie, and that is Black and White.
Bleach, if you're white, can you die?
I'm on parole, bro.
Won the dream you were holding me, that's all.
Black and White. Rated R. Now play.
So directed by James Toback, this is set in New York City, where it features several loosely related stories centering around a pair of documentary filmmakers, Sam and her husband Terry, who are played by... Sam is played by... I'm trying to see who... Brooke Shields, and Terry, played by Robert Downey Jr., following a group of Caucasian teens, Raven, Charlie, Will, Marty, Ren, and others, who try to fit in with Harlem's black hip-hop crowd, which includes gangster rapper Rich Bauer and his music partner Cigar in a launching recording gig, as well as a college basketball player, Dean, who's conflicted on taking a fall for a game from a shady gambler, Mark Clear, who has hidden agendas for Dean and Rich. So there's a lot going on in this movie. A big cast overall here. Not just Robert Downey Jr. and Brooke Shields, but also Gabby Hoffman, Jared Leto, Scott Conn again. At least this is a better movie for him than Ready to Rumble was. Marla Maples is in this movie too. Joe Pantoliano. Again, another movie with him in it too. It was a big weekend for the both of them, I guess. Bijou Phillips, Raekwon, Claudia Schiffer, Ben Stiller's in this as well as the detective. Eddie K. Thomas, Elijah Wood, Mike Tyson is in this as well as Michael B. Jordan. So there is some decent names in here overall. And this is James Toback coming off of Two Girls and a Guy, which was a decent success for him. But this one, not so much. This was kind of when his standing was kind of going down after a couple years. Like after his name wasn't as well known, I should say, compared to what it was beforehand. I mean, this is the guy that was nominated for an Oscar for writing Bugsy. I think he won too, if I'm not mistaken. No, he was just nominated. But there are times when the movie has a good idea to it. There are some interesting concepts overall that could make this work, but it's just kind of a boring film that doesn't really have a whole lot there in terms of a meaty storyline that you really get into. Like, everybody in the cast is doing fine for what they're trying to do here, but it's just not enough to make the movie memorable in any way, shape, or form. The film is just kind of like, it's there, but the pieces are definitely there for something really good, but it just doesn't show up when it needs to the most. And it's really a shame because there is a lot of good talent in this movie, but just not enough ideas to really make it stand up on its own that could really make it work as well as it should. But it's a letdown. It's definitely a letdown, especially for this director who's done a lot of good work over the past couple of years before this, but this one not so much. So yeah, that's Black and White.
You're here for 28 days of rehab on April 14th.
Tomorrow.
Habits will be broken.
What's your drug of choice? I have to pick just one.
Rules will be bent. And the life of the party
I'm having a bad day.
will get a life.
What are you proposing?
Yeah.
At rehab.
Sandra Bullock,
I thought one was a lesbian.
I'm not a lesbian.
28 days.
It'd be okay if you were, you know.
Rated PG-13. Opens everywhere April 14th.
God, Sandra Bullock was picking some pretty bad movies around this time. She plays a big city newspaper columnist who's forced to enter a drug and alcohol rehabilitation center after ruining her sister's wedding and crashing a stolen vehicle. This is actually written by Susanna Grant, which we've just talked about a couple weeks ago with Aaron Brockovich coming out. And this is Betty Thomas, who's usually been very reliable, at least up to this point, making stuff like the Brady Bunch movie, The Late Shift, Dr. Dolittle. But this was kind of one of her first films where she really kind of took a little bit of a nosedive. The movie, it has a difficult task of taking a very tough subject to talk about and trying to make it a light, fluffy comedy. I think back to something like Patch Adams. Like, you're taking a story that really should be something interesting and making it something that is turning it into turning it into something that's so whimsical and lighthearted when you really did not need to do that, especially in critical moments in that movie. This one's not quite as bad, but it levels onto some of those levels at some point during the course of the film. What I'm trying to say here is that it's close enough where it could almost be compared somewhat to Patch Adams, but luckily not as offensively bad as that movie is. But this one, it's just trying too hard to figure out what kind of a tone it wants to take. If it wants to do the story right, you have to be a little bit more serious about it. You have to be more of a even kind of a dark comedy to it. You can't be this light, fluffy, romantic comedy here, which it tries to do at some points here, and it just really, it doesn't work, and it has a lot of good talent involved in here. I mean, you've got Viggo Mortensen, Dominic West, Elizabeth Perkins, Steve Buscemi, Alan Tudyk, Mike O'Malley, Renee Santoni, Maureen Jean-Baptiste, Margaret Martindale, Diane Ladd. A phenomenal cast in this movie, but they're not given a whole lot to do here. And again, I think the tone of this movie really... you know, I just thought of another movie that this should have been more like. It should have been something more of like a dark comedy on the level, dark comedic drama, something on the lines of One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. I feel like it's trying to be One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, but for the Lifetime woman out there who sits at home and watches nothing but Lifetime and Hallmark Channel movies all the time, like the movies where nobody gets dealt with any hard responsibilities, and everything works out in the end crystal clear. And this film, this is not the case for that. And again, Sandra Bullock picked some really bad movies around this time period. I mean, she really picked some really lousy stinkers. But this is definitely another one of them. And yeah, I'd say avoid this one like the plague. 28 days. Just don't even bother with it. So with that said, on to our next movie. Another comedy, this time with Ben Stiller, Edward Norton, and Jenna Elfman. And that is Keeping the Faith.
Keeping the Faith is terrific. Hilarious. Funny. Sexy.
Holy majoli!
Loaded with laughs.
I have a relationship with my phone. It's set to vibrate.
Wow. Maybe the best date movie ever.
Punch me.
I'm not gonna punch you.
Are you some kind of wuss?
No,
Keeping the Faith. Rated PG-13. Starts April 14th.
So you have a story here with Ben Stiller and Edward Norton playing these two priests. They're Jewish and Catholic, respectively. They grow up to become both a rabbi and a priest. And this woman named Anna, played by Jenna Elfman, who they knew when they were younger, comes back to town as a stunning woman. Jake is up to the head to be the head of the synagogue. He's not married, which doesn't make his appointment any easier. Jake finds himself attached to Anna because she's not Jewish. He can't marry her, but because she's not Jewish, I should say, he can't marry her, as it would make his appointment less likely. Brian also finds himself attracted to Anna, but the priesthood doesn't allow that. Their friendship is strained when each learns of the other's feelings for her, and hilarity ensues. Even though this is more of a serious, dramatic, more of a dramedy in a way, this is Edward Norton's directorial debut too, and you know that trailer I showed you doesn't really make this movie watchable, honestly. Like it seems like it's going more for the comedic elements to it, but watch the movie and you'd be pleasantly surprised at how actually really good it is, and it's proof that Edward Norton probably should be directing more movies. He only made 2 movies as a director. This one and Motherless Brooklyn, which was not a good movie that came out not too long ago, honestly. But this movie is actually really well done. I feel like this was the movie that something like 28 Days was trying to be more like. Something that takes something a little bit too... Something that takes a little bit of a more... Maybe not a darker element compared to rehab and all that, but an idea of these two, of a priest and a rabbi falling in love with the same girl, and the chaos that ensues because of that. And even though there's a lot of comedic elements in here, there is a little bit more of a dramatic edge to it than you would be led on to, and I think it does a very good job of handling that. This is like I said, Edward Norton's directorial debut. This writer, Stuart Blumberg, this is one of his more notable films that he wrote. Actually, he's written a ton of other films that are actually kind of good. I mean, I'm looking at his list here. He started his career off as a writer on Mad TV, and then he did this. He followed up with a very underrated The Girl Next Door with Alicia Cuthbert, and then the fantastic The Kids Are Alright, and another underrated film, Thanks for Sharing, which kind of has more of an interesting storyline on that front as well. But in terms of the idea of rehab and all that stuff, but in here. I don't know why I'm bringing up rehab here, because it has nothing to do with that in this movie, but it's a very well-made film. Ben Stiller is very good in here, so is Jenna Elfman and Norton, and you also have Eli Wallach. Anne Bancroft is also in here as well, one of her last film roles. Milos Forman actually has a role in this film as well. Holland Taylor, Lisa Edelstein, Rena Sofer, Brian George, David Wayne, Kathleen Long Birds from Malcolm in the Middle. There's a lot of good talent in this film, and the writing overall is very well done. The comedy is very good too. It's not as great as it doesn't rely heavily on not on gross out jokes or jokes that are cheap jokes like that, but punching joke in there. It's actually much more clever than that, and I got to give the movie a lot of credit for doing that. And again, it's that writer, Stuart Blumberg. He's written a lot of good movies that are very similar to this, and it's very well done. It's a very well made film. It's also very heartwarming too. It's a nicely done film. Definitely shows that Edward Norton should be directing more movies. Honestly, I'd say definitely check this one out if you haven't seen it. Keeping the Faith. So, With that said, let's move on to our next movie, probably the most notable film that came out this weekend, and for good reason, and that is Christian Bale in American Psycho.
Yes, Patrick?
Would you like to accompany me to dinner?
Patrick, you're so sweet.
That's a wonderful suit. You look so soft.
When you've got it all,
You look great.
Thanks.
you can get away with murder.
You're inhuman.
Did you know I'm utterly insane?
American Psycho.
The movie that basically welcomed Christian Bale into the lexicon of films, because this was his big breakout film, and he plays a New York City investment banker who leads a double life as a serial killer, and he's got all these different people that he involves himself with in the movie, including Willem Dafoe, Jared Leto, Josh Lucas, Chloe Sevigny, Samantha Mathis, Carrie Seymour, Justin Theroux, Reese Witherspoon. It blends horror and black comedy to satirize 1980s yuppie culture and consumerism, exemplified by Bateman and the cast in the film. And what more do I gotta say about this movie, man? This movie is sold specifically on Christian Bale's performance as Patrick Bateman. It is so over the top. It is so hilarious and very scary and threatening at the same time. But goddamn it, man, he puts his all into this, and this movie is just so friggin' brilliant. Like, the satirical element to it is just so well done. It's a great dark comedy. It's a great dark horror film. I mean, moments in this movie that you still quote to this very day. I need to go return some videotapes. Don't just look at it, Christine. Eat it. Like, if you want to know how much of a lasting impact this movie has had on some people, go watch the Flick Pick, because he's done videos similar to... He's done similars where he's basically kind of transformed into this character. Not in a serious way, not that he's killed anybody that we know of, but he's made a lot of videos related to this film, and rightfully so, because it's a really fun movie. It's a really fun dark comedy, a dark horror film at the same time. Like, and in a way, you kind of believe you kind of buy into what Christian Bale's trying to say to these people, to say in this movie. Even though you don't agree with his actions, he's making good points, but like, it's just a weird, fun movie. And credit to this director, Mary Herron, and this writer, Guinevere Turner, who would later go on to write who would later work on another movie based off of this author's work, Bret Easton Ellis, who wrote the novel based on The Rules of Attraction, which is a criminally underrated film. We'll eventually get to that one in 2002, but it's Christian Bale, man. This is the movie that basically welcomes him into the world and makes people realize this guy's a great actor, man. Like, this is the film that literally turned his career around and made him the actor that we know him as today. And it's a great movie, man. I can't recommend this one enough. American Psycho, definitely check it out. So, with that said, let's move on to our last film, and that is Paul Newman and Linda Fiorentino in Where the Money Is.
Could knock that place off.
Gene Shalit of the Today Show says 2 words are all I need. Paul Newman.
You don't rob the route, you rob the crew.
Where the Money is fun, full of surprises.
We're now officially on the wrong path.
If you go to see a show to have a good time, this is it.
I'm looking for a friend of mine.
What took you so long?
Where the Money is.
You haven't lived till you've heard someone say that to you.
Rated PG-13. Starts Friday at theaters.
So you have Linda Fiorentino as this popular nurse at a retirement home who spends her free time with her hunky, athletic husband, played by Dermot Mulroney. He was the star of the school's football team. When she was high school prom queen, he'd still do anything for her, including cleaning up the messes her ideas get them in. When a legendary bank robber played by Paul Newman has a major stroke in prison and is placed in the home, supposedly having lost all control of his body, she notices he must be in far better condition than he lets on, because it tries to... he's basically trying to... Toy boat. I'm not going to stop now. I'm going to keep going. She notices he must be in far better condition than he lets appear, and tries everything to find out. There we go. When she pushes his wheelchair in a canal at a picnic, Henry gives up, and the McKays keep his secret, and Henry doesn't actually run in Wayne's car as his first impulse was. Soon Carol gets his confidence, and the two start planning how the three can commit another robbery on an armored money transport, which brings them together. It doesn't go according to plan, but they get the loot. However, before the money can be split, some big surprises change everything. So this plot has a lot of things going on about it. This is actually Paul Newman's second to last live-action film he made, because the last one would be Road to Perdition that came out in 2002. He still would be doing voice work. I cannot talk today. he still did voice work after Road to Perdition. Of course, he was the voice of Doc Hudson in Cars. He's done a lot of other stuff as well, including TV work. But this was the second to last film that he was in before he died a couple of years after. Again, I can't talk today. This was the last movie that Paul Newman did. The second to last movie Paul Newman did before he died in 2008 in terms of live-action films. And this is also Linda Fiorentino's last theatrically released film. She hasn't really done a whole lot since then, too, shockingly, because she was still a pretty good actress around this time, and she just kind of left everything out of is out there, and really has not done anything of noteworthiness since then, unfortunately. But maybe this movie probably was the reason for it, because it's really not a good movie. So much goes on in this movie that really makes no sense whatsoever. Like, it's too clustered of a storyline. There's not really a whole lot there, and you really don't understand why some of these characters are doing what they're trying to accomplish here in this film. It really does not lead to anything interesting or funny or unique about it when it's all said and done. It's just kind of like they tried to make a movie because, hey, other people have made movies like this before, so clearly we need to make one like it too. And this comes from the director of Less Than Zero. So they got a director who hasn't made a movie in 13 years to make this film. And this is the movie that you decided to come back for, honestly. But, yeah, bottom line, this is a pretty forgettable movie on so many levels. And definitely not considered one of Paul Newman's better films, especially towards the end of his career. So, yeah, you'd be better off avoiding this one like the plague. So that's where the money is.
U-571, rated PG-13, starts Friday, April 21st at theaters everywhere.
The story of U-571, you follow a World War II German submarine boarded by American submariners to capture her Enigma cipher machine. You have a cast that includes Matthew McConaughey, Harvey Keitel, Bill Paxton, John Bon Jovi, Jake Weber, David Keith, Matthew Settle. This is the first film written by David Ayer, and this is a film from Jonathan Mostow, who had just done Breakdown a couple of years prior to this. It's a submarine movie, and it's a good submarine film. I mean, usually it's not that hard to make a good submarine movie. There's been a couple exceptions here and there. We'll eventually get to K-19 The Widowmaker in a couple of years from now, which is not very good, but this isn't quite Das Boot or Hunt for Red October good, but it's good enough on its own merits. It has a lot of the things that makes a good submarine movie. The fear is this whole thing is taking place mostly under the waters, and you really do get a very intense thriller when you're down here in the middle of the ocean with just this inside the submarine, and that's your only way to move around without getting any water on you. But then you get attacked by people, you get attacked by these other submarines and all that, and it does make for a very intriguing movie. The cinematography overall is top notch. The cinematographer for this is Oliver Wood, who's done a lot of different movies, not just with thrillers, but also comedies as well. He's done a lot of comedies for stuff like Freaky Friday, Talladega Nights, The Bourne series, Face Off, Die Hard 2. He's done a lot of good. He's shot a lot of great movies, and this is a really good movie. It's a well-made film. It's a movie that does keep you on the edge of your seat. It has a really great cast to show you the tension that goes on in here, and it's one of those movies that says, hey, before he won an Oscar, Matthew McConaughey was a really good actor before he eventually went on that little spell of nothing but these lazy romantic comedies that we'll get to as we get to the rest of the decade. But yeah, U-571 is a great film, and I highly recommend checking it out. So, with that said, on to our next movie, and that is Love and Basketball.
All her life,
I keep hoping you'll grow out of this tomboy thing.
people said she wasn't good enough.
Maybe it's time you start thinking about other things besides basketball.
But nothing could stop her
Starting your point. Thanks, Coach.
from making her dreams come true.
Never knew anyone loved ball as much as you.
In Love and Basketball, rated PG-13, starts Friday, April.
Starring Sanaa Lathan and Omar Epps, and this is the feature directorial debut for Gina Prince by the Wood, who would later go on to direct many movies, including I just had the name of one of them, and now I can't remember it. The Secret Life of Bees, that's one of them. Disappearing Acts. Most recently, she directed The Woman King, which was one of last year's best films. And in this movie, you have the story of Omar Epps and Sanaa Lathan, who are two next-door neighbors in Los Angeles who are pursuing their respective basketball careers before eventually falling for each other. And a combination of a lot of great things here. Great direction by Gina Prince Bythewood, great writing as well by her, and two really phenomenal actors working off each other and creating some very good chemistry between one another. We've seen Sanaa Lathan and Omar Epps in other movies such as The Wood and The Best Man, and they've proven they can be really great actors in a lot of good stuff. And you also have great performances by Alfre Woodard and Dennis Haysbert in here. It's produced by Spike Lee. And it's just a really well-made film. It's a film that did not get the right attention at the beginning. When it came out, it still made some money at the box office, but it went on to have this cult following over the years and essentially put itself into its pop culture cementation down the road. So much so that it actually got a Criterion Collection release not too long ago. And you can definitely see why. It's a very well-made film. It's got a lot of good elements to it. There's really not a whole lot of flaws to it. You do really get invested in the relationship between the two and wanting to see them pursue their dreams. And it does a really good job of handling that. Everything about the movie works very well. There really are not a whole lot of flaws I can really think about with this film the more I think about it. And it's definitely one you should definitely check out. Definitely for the performances alone, but to see a really good director making her feature film debut and doing a pretty damn good job at it. So not much more to say about this one. Definitely check out Love and Basketball. So with that said, on to our next movie, and that is Gossip.
Well, the party was still going on.
Well, did you tell somebody that something happened?
Absolutely not.
If you were bragging about it,
I don't need to lie about sex. Whatever it is that you think I did, I don't know why you think that.
he's a murderer.
I didn't do it.
It can turn you on or turn on you.
You're not gonna get away with it this time.
I heard.
Gossip, rated R. Starts Friday, April 21st at a theater near you.
So the premise of this is that on a beautiful college campus, something ugly is about to be spread around. A bit of gossip that was told is starting to take a frightening turn. Who could it offend it, and how far will the person on the other side go to handle the embarrassing situation? And chaos ensues, of course, because why wouldn't they? We wouldn't have a movie then. You've got James Marsden, Lena Headey, Norman Reedus, Kate Hudson, Joshua Jackson, Eric Bogosian, Edward James Olmos, Sharon Lawrence, Rysher Coughlin. A lot of great talent involved in the film, and a decent director, too. You wouldn't believe this is the same guy that gave us An Inconvenient Truth, and also these other great documentaries, like Waiting for Superman, and still a Michael J. Fox movie, which just came out recently. And, this director, Davis Guggenheim, who has had better success as a documentary filmmaker. I believe this is his only film that he's done. As I'm looking to see some of these other movies here, so I'm not... Yeah, this is the only scripted film he's ever directed, and I think we can be all glad that he took the documentarian route. Not because he's not a bad director, but he had to pick a better project than this, because this is a film that really is mostly dependent on a good script, and sadly the script is not it. This is a script that's really trying way too hard to have a message to it or try to be something like a big twist and turn film. This thing sat on a shelf for almost two years before it came out, so that should tell you everything you need to know about how bad this movie is. It's not a very good film. A waste of great talent all around. This one you could definitely skip, but like the plague. So avoid this one, like the plague, like I said. But I guess if you want to see Lena Headey and Norman Reedus in some early film roles before they eventually got involved with Game of Thrones and The Walking Dead, there you go. Or even Kate Hudson before she got nominated for an Oscar for Almost Famous that year. But other than that, though, it's not really worth it in the end. So let's go ahead and wrap this one up with probably the best overall film that came out this weekend, and that is Sofia Coppola's The Virgin Suicides.
Here, honey. You're not even old enough to know how bad life gets.
Obviously, Doctor. You've never been a 13-year-old girl.
So this is a story about a man about 40 years of age telling the story from when he was a teenager in upscale suburban Detroit of him and his friends three of his friends' fascinations with the mysterious and doomed Lisbon sisters. In 1974, the sisters were 17 years old. 17-year-old Therese, 16-year-old Mary, 15-year-old Bonnie, 14-year-old Lux, and 13-year-old Celia. Their fascination still remains as they try to piece together the entire story. The sisters were mysteries, if only because of having a strict and overprotective upbringing by their father, who taught math at the girls' private co-ed school, and overly devout Catholic mother, who largely dictates the house rules. The story focuses primarily on the two incidences and the resulting situations in the girls' lives. The first was an action by Cecilia to deal with the emotions over her life, and the second was the relationship between Lux, the sister who pushed the boundaries of the household rules most overtly in doing what most teenagers want to do, and Trip Fontaine, who could have any girl he wanted, but he wanted solely Lux. Like I said, this is Sofia Coppola, the daughter of Francis Ford Coppola, making her feature film directorial debut, basically trying to say to people that I could be worth something in Hollywood after her very debatable performance in The Godfather Part 3, which was not the best, but certainly not the worst thing about that movie. And even then, I still like The Godfather 3. I like it more than most people do, but this was the movie that kind of showed that, hey, she's a Coppola, she's got the same directing chops as her famous father does, and she's got a really great cast to work with here. James Woods, Kathleen Turner, Kirsten Dunst, A.J. Cook, Josh Hartnett, Scott Glenn, Michael Paré, Jonathan Tucker, Danny DeVito. A really phenomenal cast in here, and just really well done. Really dark, really sadistic, really twisted. It just works on so many different levels. It features a lot of fantastic performances all around it here, and a great visual look to it. A soundtrack that's really well done, and it shows what Sofia Coppola could do as a director, as she's shown later down the road with the next couple of films she did after this. Lost in Translation, which is probably her best overall film, and then Marie Antoinette, which is a very criminally underrated film. And most recently, she just did stuff like On the Rocks, which was a really good movie that went on Apple TV with Bill Murray and Rashida Jones. And then most recently this year, she had Priscilla, which is, of course, the biopic of Priscilla Presley. That one I haven't seen, so I can't really say if it's any good or not. But she's made a lot of really good movies as a director. And this is a film that shows that, hey, she's got the directing chops to work with it. And she really does let it go. It's a really well-made film, fantastic film. Definitely recommend checking it out if you haven't seen it already. The Virgin Suicides.
The Flintstones are back in a brand new motion picture.
Mommy, tonight we shower.
The Flintstones in Viva Las Vegas. Rated PG. From April 28.
So yeah, you see what I'm talking about here. None of the people from the original movie are back here. You don't have John Goodman. You don't have Rick Moranis. You don't have Elizabeth Perkins. You don't have Rosie O'Donnell. But you have actors who aren't bad choices for the most part. I mean, Mark Addy does kind of look like Fred. Mark Addy, of course, was from the Full Monty. Stephen Baldwin as Barney Rubble is kind of funny. But Jane Krakowski as Betty and Kristen Johnson as Wilma, like, I mean, this just has a ton of problems that we'll delve into here. But basically, you have a story here that's basically the prequel to the original movie. Not just the original movie, but the story of the Flintstones, of course, because Fred and Barney are these bachelors, and they meet Wilma Slaghoople and her friend Betty, and they go on an adventure in Rock Vegas where they're deal with this villain played by Thomas Gibson, who's trying to woo Wilma as well. You also have Joan Collins, Harvey Korman, and we also have the Great Gazoo in here because, yeah, he's a popular character, I guess, and he's played by Alan Cumming, which is not as bad as you would think, especially when you consider that Son of the Mask is yet to come out yet. Then that's the scariest you'll ever see Alan Cumming. Trust me, we'll get to that one later on down the road. But it's the same director, Brian Levant, who directed Jingle All the Way and also directed the original Flintstones. But yeah, you can kind of see what I'm talking about here. This coming about 3 years too late. If this was released in 96 or 97, then maybe I could see it existing, but it's 2000. Like, the Flintstones were still very popular as the TV show, and the movie was still playing on TV a lot back then, but it's been 6 years, man. You can't. I have this thing with comedy sequels. Like, if you're gonna do a comedy sequel, you gotta do it between 2 to 4 years. 2 to 4 years between the first comedy sequel's release, the first comedy's release, and then the sequel afterward. If you're doing it more than that, you're struggling to find something there. Like, we've had a lot of those recently, stuff like Coming to America, which was a pointless sequel on so many levels. But the Hangover movies are another example. Probably one of the rare examples of a sequel that's just one of the most pointless trilogies of all time. And this, I mean, look, the first Flintstones movie is no classic by any means. For nostalgic sake, it's a fine movie, but it definitely looked like they were trying to do more in that movie than anything in this film. I mean, this thing just seems like a pointless film from the get-go. Now, don't get me wrong, casting Jane Krakowski and Kristen Johnson as Betty and Wilma is fine, I guess. I mean, I like Jane Krakowski, I like her on Ally McBeal, 30 Rock, Kristen Johnson's funny on Third Rock from the Sun, but you gotta give him something funny to work with here. You know, as is casting Mark Addy as Fred, and also Stephen Baldwin as Barney, which I actually think that's kind of funny, but the first movie was riding on John Goodman and Rick Moranis. This one is riding on the dude from The Full Monty and the dude from Biodome. Start to see the problem here? And, yeah, there's way too much going on here. Like, they feel obligated to throw in every single Flintstone reference they could. From Dino being thrown in there for no particular reason. He's just kind of there to just be Dino, of course. And we gotta use those Mel Blanc barks at some point during the movie, all the way up to the Great Gazoo, which makes no sense because the Great Gazoo in the original show doesn't show up until halfway through the series. Like, so now you've just created this insane continuity error, and you know, the funny thing, Alan Cumming, as much as I criticized him before, he's probably one of the best things about the movie, because he's at least trying to say whatever he can in this movie. I mean, he's not doing a great job. He's not really given a whole lot to do, but goddamn, he's putting his all into it. The story overall, it's just falling into a lot of cliche territory, so much so that it's pretty much ripping off the first movie on a number of different levels, and like the bad guy's evil plan is very similar to the plan from the first movie. Like, they didn't even try to do something different. They just put this out there because they had to keep the rights to make these movies in case they wanted to make a third one, which they never did, and that's probably a good thing, because this movie just is a miserable mess of a film on so many levels. It's not funny. It's not enjoyable. Sometimes the effects look okay, but at the same time, they really don't. It doesn't help when the film is a completely pointless waste of time, and this is a pointless waste of time. You did not need this movie. Like, give us something more with these characters. Do something different. Do something unique. Like, you could do other things with this movie. Like, I always see people say that this movie is one of those films that is better. They think it's better than the original film. No. The original Flintstones movie was not a classic by any means, but that one was at least trying, and actually had elements about it that still works, even after all these years. But this is just a mess of a film. Like, avoid this one like the plague. Avoid this one like crazy. This is a bad film. A really, really bad film. And not a great way to start this week up. But we do get better with our next movie. And that is probably the best movie that came out this weekend. And that is Jim Caviezel and Dennis Quaid in Frequency.
What if you could talk to your father?
John? Dad?
Who's been dead for 30 years.
Tell me I'm not dreaming here.
The critics are saying if you like The Sixth Sense, you'll love Frequency.
Run, Johnny, run!
It will keep you guessing to the very end.
Like says that he's talking to Johnny in the future.
A mind-bending thriller.
Something we did changed the past.
Enjoy the ride. Frequency, rated PG-13.
So the story of Frequency is that you have this rare atmospheric phenomenon allowing a New York City firefighter, played by Jim Caviezel, to communicate with his son 30 years into the future via a ham radio, his father being played by Dennis Quaid. The son uses the opportunity to warn the father of his impending death in a warehouse fire and manages to save his life. However, what he does not realize is that changing history has triggered a new set of tragic events, including the murder of his mother, and now the two must now work together 30 years apart to find the murderer before he strikes so that they can change history again. What a great premise for a movie, and it kind of reminds me a little bit also kind of that movie that Dennis Quaid was in, Inner Space, with Martin Short, a much more darker and more serious version of Inner Space, except Inner Space isn't taking place with Dennis Quaid inside of Jim Caviezel. This is taking place 30 years into the future. And notably interesting about this film is that this is written by Toby Emmerich. Now, that's a name you may not be familiar with, but he has gone on to have a unique and interesting history in terms of New Line Cinema, because not but 8 years later, he became the president of New Line Cinema, and I think he still is to this very day. And had no idea that he was actually a writer before he became that. And lo and behold, this is I believe his first film he ever wrote. And what a great film to write on, start writing on. But then again, when you also consider that Robert Shea, the head of New Line Cinema, has also directed movies as well, maybe it's not as surprising as you might think. But But still, what a great concept for a movie, and it helps to have great performances by Jim Caviezel and Dennis Quaid, and a cast that also includes Andre Braugher, Elizabeth Mitchell, Noah Emmerich. I mean, there's just a really good cast here. Michael Cera makes one of his early film appearances in this film. It's just a really, really good movie, man. A very underrated gem. This director, Gregory Hoblet's, also made some pretty underrated films as well. He did Fracture, which is a very good film. He did the 93 film Class of 61. He did Primal Fear. Fantastic director, and man, this is probably one of his best films. It's a really well-made film. If you have not seen Frequency, I highly recommend checking it out. It's definitely worth a watch, just for the premise alone. It's just a really, really good film. And, yeah, can't say any more about that one. So let's go ahead and move on to our next movie that we have here, our last film, actually, and that is Natalie Portman and Ashley Judd in Where the Heart Is.
All captured your imagination.
Now, how long were you living in the Walmart?
6 weeks.
Now, 20th Century Fox takes you on a journey
I have no family, no job. I got a baby.
where you'll meet people you'll never forget.
I have 5 children. You mind if I drive real slow? I'd like to pretend it's a vacation.
Natalie Portman, Ashley Judd, Stockard Channing, and Joan Cusack in the most memorable motion picture of the year, Where the Heart Is. Rated PG-13. Friday, only in theater.
Yeah, it wasn't one of the most memorable films of the year. This thing didn't even make a ton of money, and in fact got harshly thrashed by critics, and probably for a good reason. This is based off of the best-selling novel, the same name. You follow the life of a 17-year-old girl played by Natalie Portman, Novalee Nation, which that name alone is really stupid. I'm sorry, but that's a stupid name to have. But you follow the story of a pregnant 17-year-old who was abandoned by her boyfriend at a Walmart in a small Oklahoma town. She secretly moves into the store where she eventually gives birth to her baby, which attracts media attention, and with the help of her friends, she makes a new life for herself in the town. I mean, it's a good premise overall, but the director is a man who's mostly known for directing episodes of Home Improvement, writing episodes of Home Improvement. The writers, Loa Gantz and Babaloo Mandel, are mostly known for writing Billy Crystal's best-known comedies. They wrote City Slickers. I think they also did When Harry Met Sally, if I'm not mistaken. Am I mistaken on that? Maybe I am mistaken on that. But they did write some good stuff. Parenthood, like I said, City Slickers, Mr. Saturday Night, A League of Their Own, Multiplicity, Ed TV. So these guys are not hacks. They are really good writers, but not even them could save this movie. And not even this great cast. I mean, Natalie Portman, Ashley Judd, Stockard Channing, Joan Cusack. You got Keith David, Sally Field is also in the movie as well. The movie is just not fun. It's a boring movie. It's a Lifetime movie of the week blown up for the big screen because they think it's a story that's worthy of a big screen adaptation. Well, it would be if you had a really good director behind it, and you got a director who's best known for his work on Home Improvement and nothing else. I mean, this guy, Matt Williams, really has not done a whole lot of film work before this, if I'm not mistaken here. He's done a lot, like I said, he's done a lot of TV work. Home Improvement, The Cosby Show. He worked on the Roseanne reboot that came out recently. He's worked on A Different World. He wrote the script for Wild Hearts Can't Be Broken, which is a very underrated Gabriel Arwar film. But other than that, though, this is one of the only films he's ever directed, and this is not a good film. It's a boring movie. It's a very mediocre film. It's a melodrama on so many different levels. It's not an enjoyable movie whatsoever. It is a waste of great talent overall. A waste of a story that could work under the right hands. And it just doesn't. It's a real mess of a film and a very big disappointment considering the talent on board here on the screen and off the screen. But they needed a better director. They needed to get somebody like a Rob Reiner probably could have made this much better. Or even an Amy Heckerling or a Nora Ephron. Somebody could really come in here and tell the story the way it should be done. A Penny Marshall, too. Like, anybody could be better than this guy that directed this film, and the results speak for themselves. It is not a very good film. It's a major, major letdown.